Hi, it's Nick. Today I want to show you a little bit how I work, how I handle particular tasks in George. So everything starts with a Jira ticket. I receive or I create a Jira ticket on my own to improve, to change, to fix something. In this case, let's dive into this ticket right away. We need to improve predicate logic for standing order API error serializers. So let me quickly explain. We have a standing order payment form where the user is able to create a standing order, and as soon as the standing order is submitted to an API might return some errors for particular input fields. And here is an example of response from an API. It returns errors saying that a particular field is invalid, and in scope it lists which field. So alias was invalid, and therefore our goal is to display some validation error underneath alias input field within standing order form. How we do it? We have an array of serializers on a client in our code base which lists particular API errors. Also it lists scopes, and also if the error is more general, doesn't relate it to particular input field, it will be displayed at the top of payment form, like a general error not related to any specific input field. Alright, and obviously since we have these API responses and this mapping on the client, we have some algorithm to match these together, and respectively, as soon as we found a match, to display translation in a form of validation error underneath a specific input field. Alright, so what the problem is? The problem is that our logic, our algorithm currently identifies first one as a valid match, and therefore displays a general error at the top of the form, where in reality there is one below which matches 100%, therefore would show the validation error underneath specific input field, like in this case alias input field. This happens because we actually loop through this array one by one and try to match each with API response error. Alright, and as soon as we found an error which matches the same error property, it doesn't matter whether it has scope or no, we consider it's a right match. So there is a mistake and we need to fix this mistake. Let me show you this array, how it looks like. So it has a lot of serializers which we try to match against API error response, and here I will try to move this particular serializer underneath more general one. For example, here we will simulate the same scenario like in a ticket, where we have this serializer without a scope, more general one, and more specific one pointing to particular input field with a scope property underneath it. The mistake will be that the first will be matched and the general error will be displayed above the payment form, which is wrong. We need to ensure that our predicate function actually matches the second one and displays a validation error underneath alias input field. Alright, this shall be clear. When I have understanding of the problem, maybe already a solution, I start by creating a branch. After creating a branch and knowing the idea behind how to implement stuff, I immediately jump to testing and try to write a test that will be read but will simulate exact behavior for this. Let's write our test. Something like this, exactly like in this scenario. The serializer with scope is defined after serializer without a scope. Let's copy stuff from the previous error, which is quite similar but different, and here we will try to change the assertion to ensure that our assertion is slightly different than previous one, and simulate the arrangement matching the scenario we want to cover with this test. So we have an API error, which returns us error and scope. And we have this mock here that retrieves us an array with serializers. And here we will define first serializer without a scope, but let's say with target. And the second serializer we define with a scope. And here we put double Z. This serializer with scope is defined after serializer without scope here. Okay. Well, let's run a test. We expect it to be red and return us the first serializer. It does returns us the first serializer. This is already cool. We have a red test that kind of simulates our behavior, simulates our issue, and we will try to fix the implementation to make this test green. But before that, let's create a commit. So I won't touch changes in our serialization array. I just moved particular serializer around to simulate scenario. But what I wanted to commit is actually this particular test that we just wrote. All right, cool. Let's get back to code editor, and our tests are running. They are red, and this is all okay. Now let's go and fix the issue. So we go to implementation. I know that in implementation we have this serialize many API errors function, and it fetches our serializer from a JSON file. This is an array of our serializers. My idea how to fix it is actually ensure that serializers are evaluated not one by one as they declared within this array, but before evaluation we sort this array by ensuring that serializer with scope are declared above more general serializers that misses the scope. And to do this, I was thinking to sort the array using array sort method, which will have first serializer and the second serializer. These are arguments for our comparison function. How to sort an array based whether serializer is defined or not is to deduct one serializer from another, but since the differentiator callback within sort method of array requires numbers, we cannot deduct string from a string this way. We need to convert this into numbers, and to convert it to numbers I first convert it to Boolean, each of them. This way API serializer without a scope will turn into false, and the API serializer with scope will turn into true. But this is not enough. You cannot deduct false from true or true from false, and we need to convert them to numbers. This will mean 1 and 0 respectively. 1 will be the true value, and false will turn into 0. This way we have a fully valid differentiator function for sort. We run our tests, and you see our tests are green, which is awesome. Alright, as soon as we have a green test, why not to put a commit in place, skipping the serializer changes, and I just add this small refactoring that we just managed as a separate commit. Okay, this is already cool. This fixes our issue, and so we have a fully qualified solution. From a clean code perspective, let's try to name this differentiator function, and I will try to abstract it. I think we could create a small method which we could call compare serializers by scope existence. Make sure that you pass a reference here, which, well, the abstraction, automatic abstraction was done slightly wrong. We need to ensure that this is how it is retrieved. Here we don't need it. Here it is. and it's not an arrow function anymore. That's fine. So you see it's abstracted now. Our composition here is much simple. Without implementation details, you could read what this function do and understand how the sorting will be done. And what else is worth to mention? The names of these parameters are A, B. Maybe it's worth to give them better names, but with TypeScript types here and very simple one-liner implementation, I think it's definitely not worth to name them somehow, because the type always clearly states what is this object. All right, we have created small refactoring. Let's try to commit it. We abstracted stuff. This is great. At the end, we push in, and this will let us to create a pull request.